riding around. When I was sitting on up through TNT area, and I was jamming on it. So we're riding out through there, and I said, look at that. When we stopped,
I just couldn't imagine what I was seeing and panicked. Half man, half monster, I guess you'd call it. It was big enough that it could, I'd say it could pick me or you up, probably carry us away. That's how big it was. Never seen anything like it. I hope I never do again, you know. It's just unbelievable.
Truck, what are we doing now?
This is where they first saw the Mothman, right?
The Loch Ness Monster, the Abominable Snowman, Bigfoot, move over. Mothman is here.
You're about to hear eyewitness accounts from the past and profound lessons for the future. This is a search for meaning, hidden on the edges of accepted reality. This is the search for the Mothman.
This sounds cheesy as fuck.
Shut up, bro.
What went on in Point Pleasant? What did they witness? Where will it go next?
What if? And it's a big question.
It's a story most of us have never heard, but this is no Hollywood fantasy. The events and the people are real.
Yeah, but the Mothman ain't.
Trust me, bro. He's real.
To me, it was the devil, Mothman, standing there, and I just sort of froze up. And I tried to talk, and I couldn't. It was this awful, horrible feeling.
Out of the corner of my eyes, I saw this creature, which was over 6 foot tall with feathers. It just looked like a giant bird, but yet a man. It was big enough that it could, I'd say it could pick me or you up, probably carry us away. That's how big it was. I've been around lots of my time, and I never ever saw a bird that big, but I did see it.
That's all we can tell is what we saw. We're not going to expound on it and make it bigger, trying to make something into it. Truth stands for itself, and you can tell it over and over, and it'll be the same every time you tell it. And that's what these people and myself are telling over and over and over, the same thing.
People now, with one touch of a button on a computer, can tell their story to millions of people. But back in 1966, you know, it was one thing to go to the police department and tell them that you saw a 7-foot man with wings and red eyes, you know. That was just unheard of. If it would have been just 2 or 3 people and that was it, I would be more skeptical than I have been, you know. But when I talked to those people, I thought, you know, why are they telling me this? They really have nothing to gain. They're just going to be ridiculed and made fun of, you know.
People make up all sorts of shit.
Nah, bro. Even the police have seen him.
In 1971, David Ramos, a former Chicago police officer, made a discovery on the banks of the river. To this day, he still has no explanation for it. Ramos now lives in Florida. Wayland has been in contact via phone and email.
I was hoping that you would you'd just walk me through your experience.
I was like 12 years old or so, and I went up on the bank of the river and I looked north, and about 200 feet away there was a huge figure, and I was looking, and it turned and it looked at me. Like I couldn't see a face, but I could see, like, you know, 2 big eyes.
Right, and do you remember what color those eyes were?
They were like yellow.
Okay.
Yellowish or red.
On November 1st, 1966, the National Guardsman at the Armory near the McClintock Wildlife Management Area claimed to see a brown, half-bird, half-man figure perched in a tree. Less than 2 weeks later, the Birdman appeared again, nearly 80 miles east of Point Pleasant.
On November 11th, 1966, in Clendenin, West Virginia, which is a little bit over an hour from here in Point Pleasant, there were 4 men digging a grave. It was later in the evening, almost dusk, and they claimed to see a flying man who flew over top of where they were digging this grave. That was reported to the newspapers and the media at that time. That was one of the first Mothman sightings or big bird sightings that took place even before here in Point Pleasant.
This is the graveyard, bro. He lives around here.
He's not real, Ted.
Just be ready. They say you don't hear him coming.
I can't believe we're at a graveyard in the middle of the night and you're scared of a giant bloody moth.
Bad things happen when people see him, bro.
For over a century, Point Pleasant has been plagued with a string of unfortunate incidents that many would call bad luck. On 4 occasions between 1913 and 1937, the Ohio River overflowed its banks, proving catastrophic for the town. The flooding cost citizens thousands of dollars in damage, and worse, untold grief in the number of lives lost. During the early part of the 20th century, with frequent disasters befalling Point Pleasant, rumors about a bizarre Birdman began to circulate. The most startling fact about these Birdman stories is that they occurred over 50 years prior to the Mothman encounters of the 1960s. The sightings began around 1914, with the creature being described as a large bird with the head of a man and a wingspread of at least a dozen feet. It was said to be of monstrous size and was covered in dark, reddish feathers that glistened in the sunlight. According to Jones, sightings of the Birdman persisted well into the 1940s, where it was reported by motorists who drove along the Ohio River just outside of Point Pleasant.
Pretty sure it's just a big bird, mate.
Nah, bro, he's a demon.
I believe Mothman to be the product of negative energy. Consider for a moment the main location where Mothman was encountered. Many of the Native American tribes would avoid this area completely because they believed it to be haunted by monsters and evil spirits. And then you have the great curse of Chief Cornstalk, the Shawnee chief who, on his deathbed, cursed the area because the white men had betrayed him.
The Shawnee are defeated, and Chief Cornstalk is forced to sign a peace agreement with the Palefaces. A few years later, Cornstalk is arrested by soldiers and killed in cold blood.
No wonder he put a curse on him.
I'm telling you, bro, Mothman's real.
November 15th, 1966, when 2 young couples took a drive.
Roger and Linda Scarborough and the Mallets were driving around in the old TNT area. It was called TNT because that's where dynamite was stored during World War II.
They had been up riding around, showing off their car. That Roger had a 57 Chevy Bel Air.
Secluded and dark, TNT was also a well-known lover's lane. But instead of fun, the 4 teenagers are about to encounter a living nightmare.
We couldn't believe what we really saw. And this thing was standing there, but it had a body just like a man.
Even though it's dark, you could still see the eyes. The most red, I mean, I can't explain the red. This was such a red. It's not a glow, but it's perfectly lit up that you cannot miss it. That's all you see when you look at it. We were really scared, and I was begging and crying for my brother to go ahead and let's get out here.
Sounds like she was talking about owl's eyes.
An owl can't keep up with a car, bro.
All of a sudden, it goes into the air and starts flying. They started racing back to Point Pleasant, and the creature was in back of the car. Really, they felt it almost was touching both sides of the highway.
That thing was right beside my window. It was so dark, but it was keeping up with the car. I kept hitting my brother on the leg, telling him, hurry up, go faster, go faster. He saw that he wasn't losing it by going faster, and so he saw the turn that goes up into the TNT factory building. And I guess it come in his head at split second, if he turned up in there, it would keep going straight. and we would turn up in there and lose it. But it didn't. He made that sharp turn, a left turn, and it was still right there beside my window.
They were doing 90, 95 miles an hour down the straight stretch. It never got in front of the car, but it stayed above the car. It would disappear for a few minutes and then come back. They decided to go to the sheriff's department. They were hesitant about telling anybody because they thought people would just, think they were making the story up.
There's some pretty big owls out there.
Bro, owls can't fly that fast.
People exaggerate about how fast they drive. Plus it was dark.
People have seen him in daylight too, bro.
On November 25th, a shoe salesman named Tom Urey was driving just north of the TNT area.
I noticed something out of the corner of my eye from the riverbank over here, and it came up over the trees, and when I first saw it, it looked like a helicopter coming up. And then when it came up over the trees, I could see it was a bird, a huge bird. Estimating the wingspan, I would say 10 to 12 feet, give or take on either end, up to 15. I'd never seen anything that large before in my life. I was scared, but I wasn't terrified. It was just a strange feeling. I mean, I'd never seen anything like it. I hope I never do again. It's just unbelievable.
Did everyone in this town have the same car?
It seems that way, bro.
Well, what did you see?
No, I was looking at it in the sky, and then all of a sudden it just, just sort of sank right into the trees, and it kind of moved around a little, and then it looked like, it's time to get away.
And I just kind of froze. It was terrifying. That's the last we've seen of him. That was enough.
There's very little humor in these stories. These are people who were genuinely terrified or genuinely puzzled.
John Keel became convinced that something very serious and very real was going on.
I went back several times, I wasn't there just once. I'd get back to New York, be exhausted, and the phone would ring, and somebody that I had met down there would be calling me and telling me about something new that had happened. Everybody thinks of hillbillies when they think of West Virginia. They were not hillbillies, and they were not the kind of people that would make these things up.
There was a certain part of the community that he visited all the time. He visited some of the Mothman witnesses and some people like that. He was in here a lot.
In Point Pleasant, West Virginia, there are 4 families living within this area. So it's very thinly populated. If Mothman wanted to live there, not very many people would bother. And I had some more leads now, as I thought it would. A pattern is building up now, and we may be able to get to the bottom of this one particular case and find out whether Mothman is mechanical or an angel or what he is.
He's a demon, bro.
Who's John Keel?
He was a reporter from New York, bro. He wrote the Mothman prophecies.
John Keel had a lot of weird things happen to him after he came to Point Pleasant to investigate the Mothman sightings. His phone calls were monitored. He always felt that somebody was following him. It could have been some of the men in black. His mail would be intercepted from time to time.
48 miles south of Point Pleasant, an appliance store owner named Tad Jones is headed to work when he sees a UFO land on Interstate 64 at around 9 a.m.
It's a long, cigar-shaped type vehicle that looked so close that you could look like you could just jump up and touch it. It had lights all on the side. It was completely silent, didn't make any noise whatsoever. We were just in awe. We just stood transfixed. We just couldn't believe that we were seeing what we were seeing.
Does Mothman fly a UFO?
Come on, bro. Loads of people saw him.
UFO reports poured in, and the local media picked up on the frenzy.
This is desolate Dry Ridge Mountain, where last night a strange and eerie thing happened.
It was this big orange glowing light, So we stopped the car, and the thing came over top of the car. We got all kinds of static on the radio, and the car quit.
Well, I discovered everything. At that time, I was a general assignment reporter. Whatever happened, whether it was in town or within our coverage area, I was I was Johnny on the spot, ready to go covered, young and ambitious. There was an outbreak of UFO sightings, and they would all start out by saying, I know you think I'm crazy, but, and they would tell me these stories about sightings that they had on their land. Usually it involved some sort of machine like a UFO. It got so bad that we basically had a special assignment desk for when people called in to report the UFOs, they would send them over to me, and I would talk to these people about it.
So what is it, a demon or an alien?
Aliens are demons, bro.
People went to the TNT area on Friday night, and while they were there, several claimed to have seen UFOs in the sky over the TNT area. And I believe the night after the Mothman was seen, Marcella Bennett and her brother, I believe Raymond Walmsley, and his wife, I think Kathy Walmsley, those three went to the TNT area, and on the way, they saw a UFO in the sky.
Every night, there'd be flying saucers going over. I was scared to death. Because, I mean, you know, we had no idea what they were going to do or what their intentions was. We figured they were from outer space or something.
That's where I first saw it at. Seen the lights rotating. Looked like it was about 4 feet high, maybe 6 or 8 foot wide. And the lights were multicolored. They were red and white, yellow, green. And it was just circulating like it wasn't making any noise. And it disappeared as quick as it appeared in the first place.
John Keel himself witnessed these strange lights in the sky.
I began to see them myself. It was beyond imagination. They were extremely bright lights, which could hover. If you flashed a flashlight at them, they'd respond, they'd flash back. I saw a lot of these lights. In fact, I saw so many of them, I lost count.
John Keel was at a loss to explain what was happening to the town, whether it was all connected, and why it was happening here, of all places.
The men in black showed up next, bro.
Well, that I do believe.
As soon as those witnesses, started reporting their stories to the newspaper reporters, to the TV stations, then these men in black, as some called them, started showing up on people's doorsteps, places of business, asking these witnesses, why they were talking about this, that they really had no reason to be causing panic.
The majority of these men are dressed in black suits and fedora hats and are driving in black sedans. Their behavior is extremely unusual and at times described as unearthly. Mary Heyer herself receives a visit from the men in black one night in January 1967 while working at her Point Pleasant office.
She was frightened for her life. She said these men had visited her quite a bit, and she said these men in black had olive complexion, and she noted one thing that I always thought was very strange. She said they didn't blink their eyes, and they would ask her questions about the Mothman.
Well, I've been around a lot of reporters in my life, and there are some I wouldn't play cards with, let alone accept their stories. Mary was very trustworthy.
She truly felt like they were a threat to her. And she felt like maybe it was because of the reporting that she was doing. And she wasn't sure whether they intended to make her stop but she was into this now and she wasn't going to give it up.
That's pretty crazy.
They tried to pull someone out of their house, bro.
Around Point Pleasant, West Virginia, reports of creature sightings, UFOs, and strange phenomena continued for months.
I'd come home, and she was scared. She wouldn't come out of the apartment. She wouldn't even answer the door, and I'm glad I had a key, because that's the only way I got in.
Keith found Connie cowering in the bedroom, and he slowly coaxed her into talking to him.
She went down that morning to get in the car, and some guy pulled up and asked her for directions. So she goes over, and he grabs her and tries to jerk her in the car. Well, she said he was dressed in black. I said, now this is too weird, but I know what took place. Because the blouse that she had was ripped, and she would not rip her clothes herself.
Not long after, a threatening note was left on Connie's front porch.
She more or less crawled into a shell. She didn't want to be by herself. She didn't want to go anywhere by herself. Why wouldn't someone want you to talk about the Mothman? That's a good question. I really don't know. This whole business about men in black and silencing witnesses, you know, you have theorists who say it's the CIA.
But to this day, the government has denied any involvement in Point Pleasant.
Well, I called the Air Force in Columbus, Ohio, and he just sort of poo-pooed it, turned it off. And it's always been a puzzle.
Someone didn't want these stories to be told and threatened those who spoke. Who were these men in black? And why did they want to cover up the truth?
We only showed up because of the UFO reports, not because of Mothman.
Trust me, bro, they're connected.
In many cultures, moths symbolize death. A moth that enters a house is said to be a sign of imminent disaster. The notion that winged hybrid creatures are evil omens dates back to antiquity. One such example are the mythical harpies. Upon the gods' command, they allegedly carry the souls of the deceased into the underworld or kill sinners and blasphemers on earth.
These things have always been here. The Indians in America here called it the thunderbird, the huge bird. In the Orient, they called it the Garuda.
You can go all the way back to 1880 when a strange flying man was seen over Coney Island, New York. The Houston Batman of the 1950s. Rio Grande, 1976 is one case. Right now, you've got a wave of Thunderbird sightings in Pennsylvania.
No one expected the tragedy that followed. Almost 13 months to the day of the first sighting of the creature, disaster struck.
I was planning to go back down to West Virginia in December of that year, and I had repeated phone calls warning me, don't go to West Virginia, because they knew that I would be using the bridge, whoever they were.
The Silver Bridge between West Virginia and Ohio, starting at Point Pleasant, collapsed on December 15th, 1967. 67 people fell into the water of the Ohio River. 46 died, and 2 bodies never were even found.
There's seemingly no apparent reason for this horrific tragedy. Then comes a terrifying report. The night before the disaster, the Mothman was seen hanging from the Silver Bridge.
And people were scared. They were so scared they didn't want to talk about the bridge. They didn't want to talk about Mothman. They didn't want to talk about anything. This town became quiet.
Damn, that's terrible.
Yeah, bro. It's a bad omen.
Rumors quickly began to spread that the collapse was connected to all the strange sightings.
You look at the Silver Bridge crashing, and people talk about the Mothman as being this banshee before the bridge collapses, telling people that they should be aware something's going to happen. Mothman, 13 months, from the 15th to the 15th, over those 13 months. And as we know from the analysis of the bridge collapsing, it was pin number 13 that collapsed the bridge.
I threw my car into reverse, and as I threw it on reverse, the bridge incline came up this way, and as I backed off, when my car stopped on me, my tires was right on the ledge where it broke off. And as I got down, I could see the bridge was falling. People were screaming. You could hear them hollering for help.
Since then, people all over the world have spoken out, also claiming to have seen a winged creature shortly before catastrophic events.
Mexico City, 1985. Reports of huge, strange birds appear in the weeks before a destructive earthquake rocks the city. Chernobyl, 1986. Locals describe frightening encounters with a bird-like man over the course of several months. Encounters that end with a devastating accident at the nuclear power plant.
It was going on all over the world. It still is. And I've gotten tons and tons of mail from people claiming similar experiences. or thanking me because suddenly they realized what they had really experienced, what they'd really gone through. A lot of people all over the world have seen these things and been bewildered by them.
Some people think the government made them in a lab, bro.
Of course they do.
There's a secret military base here, bro.
As early as the 1960s, there were stories about the TNT area near Point Pleasant. Allegedly, the facility served to conduct experiments and weapon tests. Some even believe it was a secret military base. Fact is, in World War II, an ammunition factory was built along the eastern shores of the Ohio River, producing hundreds of tons of TNT explosives a day. The factory area was kept top secret.
This was a city within itself, okay? The people that worked there during wartime, it was very high security. You couldn't just drive up there and look around, you know. They would take people to work on buses that had the windows blackened.
It was also later revealed that the TNT area, where many of the sightings took place, had been horribly polluted. Many of the ingredients that had gone into making the munitions had been dumped and left to seep into the local ponds. In the 1970s, scientists declared the area an environmental disaster. It is still one of the top EPA Superfund cleanup sites.
I think it's nested out here. I really do believe it did. So anything could have made its nest up here and had a very good time of it because of all the trees, the brush, and then these bunkers. And being that it was in a man-type or human-type form, rather than roost in a tree or some kind of nest would make, what better place to hide out than those bunkers? So this was like whole heaven to it, in my opinion, and I think that's why it stayed in this area.
There you go. It's probably just a mutated bird.
Nah, bro. They were trying to make a super soldier.
It's not just a wild area. It's also a contaminated area and a government-controlled area. At one point, it was a secret base. And later on, when it was discovered it was polluted, that just added to the story, right? Because the question is it mutants? Is it some sort of unknown, top-secret, evil monster that came out of it? And it's that whole sort of Frankenstein's monster theory, right?
It remains unclear whether other secret military projects were taking place on site. The documents are still classified. Today, the forest surrounding the former ammunition factory seems deserted. Old bunkers where the explosives were stored remain to this day.
Anytime you have something that's hidden or kept secret, like this, it's going to generate stories. It's going to generate mystery because people want to know what's in there, what's going on there. Why is this still closed? So there are hundreds of bunkers around here, and this is one of them. This one's still closed off. In fact, it says high explosives on it. So I don't know what's in there, but probably dangerous.
Probably explosives. Says on the fucking door.
That's what they want you to think, bro.
A local ornithologist claimed that it had really been just a big bird all along, a sandhill crane. This species superficially matches descriptions of the creature.
Sandhill cranes have an average wingspan of around 6.5 feet and are about 3 to 4 feet tall. They also happen to have red patches around their eyes. Do sandhill cranes ever make it to West Virginia? The answer is yes. Because I am a crazy bird person and this Mothman thing was driving me insane, I contacted the Cornell Lab of Ornithology for sandhill crane data from the 1960s. While they couldn't give me anything from that time period, I did find that sightings of sandhill cranes happen today. The mutation theory might have a little more validity to it than some of the other explanations.
But eyewitnesses disagree.
Wrong color, too skinny. I've seen pictures of sandhill cranes on TV, and no. In my opinion, Professor Smith from West Virginia University was 100% wrong.
Various college professors tried to say that it was a stork or something dumb like that, and some people said it was a giant owl. Well, I've seen large owls, but I've never seen an owl that as big as a man.
So when you look at the wingspan of these owls, they're between about 3 and 5 feet wide. Well, the Mothman is supposed to be far bigger than this. The wingspan would have to be 3 or 4 times its width. And it just doesn't make sense biologically. It can't be a real animal.
Told you, bro. It's not a bird.
But you can't just trust someone because they wear an Indiana Jones hat.
You just might think that there's not much that can take me by surprise. You'd be wrong.
Why is he on a Segway?
Here we have an entire town in fear of their lives from something that can't explain, a creature 7 feet tall that can fly 100 miles an hour and maybe even bring down a bridge, and they blame it on this guy? Don't get me wrong, he's scary. If you're a field mouse, perhaps the real question here is, why did so many people think they saw a monster and even blame it for the death of 46 people? Weird or what? But if I were a monster hunter, indeed, if I were hunting the Mothman, I think I'd be taking something a little more substantial than this. I mean, at least I think you take something like this.
Yeah, boy.
Wouldn't you? But we have to ask the question, if monsters really exist, why is no one, a monster hunter or not, been able to catch one? Then again, if monsters were just ordinary critters, they wouldn't really be monsters, would they?
Do people actually hunt this thing?
Nah, bro. People love him. There's a Mothman festival.
Point Pleasant itself has embraced the mysterious creature as its own. In 2002, local residents Jeff Walmsley and Carolyn Harris created the first ever Mothman Festival, celebrating this particular chapter in the Mountain State's history. In 2005, Walmsley opened the world's only Mothman Museum. The town is now more associated with the creature than any other piece of its long and storied history. Many of the original witnesses have passed away, and in recent years, other key players in the Mothman story, such as Carolyn Harris, have passed on as well.
The town hasn't changed that much, quite frankly. It doesn't take much to turn Point Pleasant back to 1966. Take off the new cars, bring in the old cars. It's virtually the same.
For several years, they talked about the Mothman nonstop, and it didn't die out because magazine writers and people like that came to town, and they kept it pretty well stirred up.
In recent years, the Mothman Festival has become the largest annual event in the state of West Virginia, with an annual attendance of more than 12,000 people. The Mothman, it seems, is truly immortal.
Told you, bro. People love him. I saw something, bro.
There's nothing out there, mate. Come on, let's go home. Wait, what the fuck is that? Not cool, bro.
Dang. What the fuck, bro? You killed Mothman. Can't believe he's real.
Was real.
We gotta get out of here, bro. Why the fuck did you bring a gun?
You had a shot, I said.
Fuck Shatner, bro. People are gonna be pissed.
Fuck it, it's done now. Let's bury him. Thanks for watching, guys. We don't do video sponsors in our show, and that's thanks to our members and everyone buying the merch. Our channel members get an extra episode every week and some behind the scenes on how we make the show.
We got some new Mothman merch, bro. It's got a hole in it. Go get some.
And as always, thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Let us know in the comments if you made it till the end. We've got 20% off everything in our merch store for the next 30 minutes. Promo code GETSOME.
Yeah, there you go, buddy. Get some.